Many of you will have run a 5K, but now it's time to step up to 10K. But does that mean double the task, double the training? In this video, we're going to discuss it all. The differences, the training, the lot.
Yeah, and one quick thing before we start, it's competition time. So keep watching the video to find out how you could win a behind the scenes look at a Running Channel shoot and meet the team in person and possibly be involved in one of our challenges. Stay tuned. So when you're running a longer distance, if you're training for a 10K and you've not run that distance before, then you're obviously going to need to spend more time on your feet. But the key there is to build up gradually. So there's the 10% rule that we talk about a lot in the Running Channel videos, where you shouldn't build up your weekly mileage by more than 10% or the distance of your long run. Yeah, exactly. Limiting that gives you a good kind of benchmark because you want to progress, you might want to do more. This applies even if you're kind of returning from injury. So you actually might be quite an experienced runner, but as part of that, you've kind of completed a 5K run or distance in your training. You're thinking, well, next I'm going to challenge myself to a 10K. Same rules apply, like build up sensibly regardless of what level you've been at before. And if you're trying to hit this kind of target and distance for the first time ever, just as applicable is like that 10% rule to kind of put a lid on not doing too much too soon. Yeah, you want to avoid things like overtraining and injuries. Yeah, exactly. Obviously, running itself is the most important thing. That's what you're thinking about in terms of the training plan that you might be following or building up to run that 10K. But actually, it can be really useful to throw in cross-training, not just because you might have experienced an injury or be a little bit under the weather and not feel quite up to going for a run, but just to keep some variety in there. Things like swimming, cycling, could be even just popping along to like five-a-side football. Yeah, anything that's different to running that involves different muscle groups. Actually, five-a-side's quite good. Obviously, you run the risk of like injury and impact and stuff, but you are moving more laterally, which you don't really do in running, so side to side. Yeah. But then things like the elliptical and the things you listed there that you could do in the gym or a leisure centre or something, the main thing that they all have in common is no impact. Yes. And so as you're building up, whether you're following, hopefully you're following that 10% rule, but it's a way of adding in extra kind of training emphasis to make you fitter aerobically without kind of stressing your body too much. And then there's the strength and conditioning side as well, so making your muscles stronger to be able to get better over the longer distance. So, you know, we did the video during lockdown of where you can do your home workouts. There's 2 on the Running Channel. Yes, there are. And they can be quite tough, but you can sort of adapt them to your own ability as well. Yeah, bodyweight exercises are a brilliant form of cross-training because you do them anywhere. You're in control of how hard they are. Actually, it's funny, we got some feedback on those videos saying these are too hard, but they're as hard as you make them because you can do them more slowly, be more controlled. Arguably, more controlled is better because it teaches you better movement patterns, which is why you're doing them. Strengthens your muscles to avoid injury and all of the good stuff, and all of that's going to help, particularly in this context where you're trying to build up to something that maybe you've never done before, which is running a 10K. If you're enjoying this video, please remember to give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the Running Channel. And don't forget, it's competition time. So leave us an emoji of your choice in the comments below and tell us why you picked that one. That could open the floodgates to all sorts. And we will pick a winner to come and have a behind the scenes look at a Running Channel shoot and maybe be in one of our future challenges. So when you're a beginner 5K runner, if you've been following a plan or maybe like Couch to 5K, then that usually focuses on just sort of easy runs, covering the distance and maybe some intervals that could even be run-walk intervals. So they don't really go into the more technical side of workouts, I suppose. So like doing things like tempo runs or hill repeats and that kind of thing. But those are the kinds of things that can help 10K, right? Yeah, exactly. Or they'll help any distance, I suppose. But often I think when you're stepping up from the first time from 5K to 10K, that's when you might come across a lot of terminology. For the very first time, in fact, we've got videos explaining the different paces, the different kind of watchwords that you come across in training plans. We've also got videos, the Workout of the Month series, for example, that shows you exactly what it's like to actually take on an intervals workout. If you've never done it before, actually seeing it written down in a training plan can be quite overwhelming. And then ultimately you're focused on varying your pace a little bit more as you step up in the distance and increasing the overall length of runs and so on when you're going from 5K to 10K and having a more awareness of your pace. So like if you run 5K for the first time, you'll be aware of how fast you can do that. 10K pace, it's further, it's going to be a little bit slower. And then often you also refer to other paces like half marathon pace and stuff, which again is slower. Which can actually be tricky for you if you've never run a half marathon before, if you're stepping up to a 10K. So I suppose there it's sort of a bit of guesswork. Guesswork, you can use something online to kind of gauge it based on distances you have run. It'll say what they think you could run for a half marathon, use that as your pace. And it might be alien to a lot of people as well. I think people might feel like they have one pace.
But as you step up through the distances, this is your opportunity to try out different paces in training because they're shorter efforts. You're getting recoveries, you may be sprinting up and down a hill, sprinting up a hill and then walking back down a hill. And I've spoken to quite a lot of people when they've run their first 5K, they do it and they feel like that's the fastest they could ever run.
Yeah.
That they've got one pace, they've gone all out to 5K. Obviously, if you're stepping up to 10K, you can't maintain that pace. But also, actually, I would challenge most people that they've probably got a little bit more in reserve that they didn't realise. Their pacing won't have been brilliantly even. And there's always a kind of a reserve of energy and pace that you just don't know is there because you're not used to kind of tapping into it. So the more paces you experiment with, I think the more you can find that you can challenge yourself and improve. So if we were talking about training for a marathon, we'd advise stopping at around that kind of 30K mark with your longest run of the week. But when it comes to 10K, if you're training to run your best in a 10K race, improve your time and so on, and you're comfortable that you can actually cover the distance because you've done it before, then there's no reason that you couldn't run a little bit further in training. In fact, I was training for 1500 meters and ran 5K and 10K in racing, but I would regularly run a half marathon on a Sunday because I was well trained, and that was part of my aerobic training to get fitter for a shorter distance.
Actually pushing yourself that little bit longer can do the world of good for your aerobic fitness and your endurance, but also your confidence come race day that you know that you can actually run the distance that you're trying to do on race day. Yeah,
the distinction there is, like you say, if you've never done it before and you're not sure you're going to cover the distance, then obviously you're not going to just jump in and run 12, 13, 15K in the middle of a training plan when you're trying to just cover the distance. But yeah, if you are looking to go a little bit faster or to focus on kind of racing in some way, then the confidence where you're not even worried about finishing it because you've done that, you know you're going to cover 10K, then you can try and find that extra 10 or 20% or maybe just a few percent of digging deeper into reserves and focusing on your pace, or have little periods in it where you're rolling a bit faster. But other times you just need to listen to your body. The same with any of these workouts, but particularly the long run is your opportunity to focus on good form, maybe listen to music, repeat mantras that can get you through longer runs.
Yeah.
I know you've done all of this as well.
Yeah, there's a video as well about how to get through long runs, and I think we do like the 5 M's or something that's like music, mantras, maths, mind games. Yeah.
Maths is your forte, right?
Oh, I love doing maths when I run. It makes the time pass quicker. So yeah, there are loads of little tips and tricks that you can have in your toolbox that then are really useful come race day as well. So rest days are something that we as runners should take really, really seriously. And I suppose when you're stepping up from 5 to 10K, you might not really have considered that the days that you're not running when you've been training for your 5K or running that 5K distance are rest days. They're just days that you're not running. Yeah. But actually rest days, when you're ramping up the distance and the intensity of your workouts, you're throwing in cross training, strength training and all the rest of it, having those days where you are completely focused on recovering, rebuilding and resting are to be taken as seriously as you're running.
Yeah, you need to treat a rest day as importantly as you might focus. I always focus on my interval sessions as like my big thing of the week, but actually then recovering from those is really important, and not just cramming everything into, if you're training 4 days a week, thinking, well, I've missed a few days, I'm gonna do them all in 4 days. That can be risky, and you can feel like because you're cross training, obviously there's less stress on your body, but it's still anaerobic stress, and it's still it's a physical activity that's tiring you out. So just listen to your body is one of the really important things. Because it can help you to recover, it can help, this is when the adaptations happen to allow you to build strength, is when you're not training. So sleep's really important. And a rest day doesn't necessarily mean an excuse to like go and hike up a mountain. Like take that into account. You should treat that really as part of your training and not think that was a real rest day.
Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes, I've been guilty of it in the past of being like, well, I've got to keep this momentum going, so I've got to do something today to stay active, and actually resting is the best thing that you can do at that point for those adaptations to occur.
Definitely, the guilt that you've hit the nail on the head. I think guilt is like every runner's experienced it. You're following a training plan and you missed a day because you're late home from work, or family, children, just life, and then feeling like you've got to cram it in, and then the guilt of miss another day, and then if the guilt on top, don't feel like you're choosing to do something that you enjoy for a reason that's like very personal to you. So take rest days without experiencing that guilt. Make it an active decision. Like when you know there's a busy day coming up, make that a rest day. So don't make it at 10 p.m. at night. Oh, that was my rest day, because then you don't feel like you've really kind of made an active decision that that was what you're doing.
So a few of my friends have recently run their very first 10K race with me, and the thing that they found completely alien was the fact that their previous 5Ks that they'd been running and sort of racing, although it's not a race, were park runs. And the environment from park run is actually quite different to when you do go to your 10K race. So I think the thing with them was, you know, you've got to pick up your race number, you've got to pin it on, you've got a timing chip. These are all new experiences that, you know, if it's your first time, take them in your stride, but remember that they're there. And we did a video about your first 10K that sort of covers like what to do at water stations and what to do with bag drops and things like that. And it's, you know, it's important to make sure that, you know, you've read all of the information beforehand for race day, because it is a very different environment. And parkrun, you can just rock up on the line like at the start time at 8:59. They start at 9 o'clock. You can kind of be milling around. Actually, funny, I ran what was broadly my first mass participation race ever recently, the 10K in Manchester. And actually, I know, I've seen all of that stuff. I've witnessed it firsthand. But we kind of often, as a former professional, we'd get like, you get waved through. You've got wristbands that get you in everywhere. You can do everything on your own time. Whereas joining the kind of the start corral and being like at the back, actually miles away from where I really wanted to be when I was starting, working out when to go to the toilet, because I didn't have my own private toilet like next to the kind of where they would look after my bags and things. It's all, you know, it should be an exciting opportunity actually to experience all of these things, but as long as you know that they're coming and they're not news to you. And I guess if you've done all of the training and you're well trained turning up to race day, then those are the only things you've got to stress about, not the race itself.
Yeah, exactly. That'll go swimming.
Or runningly.
One last thing to mention is pacing. So it might be obvious, but try to be as even as possible. Ultimately is the best advice. Don't try and bank time if you are thinking about a PB. Or if you're inexperienced and trying to cover the distance for the first time, just be sensible. Maybe start slower than actually you'd anticipate. And then you mentioned like that race environment, that can kind of, the kind of adrenaline can definitely make you go too fast. You get swept up in the crowds of people, which is exciting, but you'll pay for it later on.
Absolutely. And at races, some of them also have paces that you can try and stick with as well. So if you know what you're kind of going for and you know what your ability is, they can be a really useful tool. I know I've loved pacing 10K races before and helping people get their goals, so they can be really useful too. So hopefully you guys have found something useful in this video to help you make the step up from 5 to 10K.
Yeah, and let us know how you get on. We'd love to find out any tips that you might have for other runners, and also don't forget the competition. Don't forget to drop that emoji, the emoji of your choice. I'm quite excited, maybe a little bit worried to find out what you're going to put in there, and you could have the chance to come and film with us at the Running Channel.